All right. History of propaganda. I don't know what to call this just yet. I'm thinking about a couple of things. And I'm not wearing an undershirt because I just threw this on. Because obviously I don't sleep at night, right? And as I was just doing that art talk earlier, my booster down here at the bottom is it's fully charged, and the car battery is on 8 amps. It's an Optima. You know, a lot of symbolism going on in all over the place. But you know, I was looking at, because I was corresponding with the public safety library, right? There's a lot of interesting stuff here, you know, that relates to national policy and policymakers, because, you know, information is king. And I was asking, you know, can I come visit? I'd love to come visit, but it's not open to the public. There is an online catalog. So that's publicsafety.gc.ca. Resources, Library Information Center. This, of course, it concerns national security, border strategies, countering crime, emergency management, and then the resources. So then I'm thinking about other stuff. I again, from critical concepts here. You know, these are a lot of things that I think about, and hence why I get so irritated and angry with those around me, because, you know, I'm not just thinking about a stupid car or going to work, for fuck's sakes, or this court date that I have in 2 days. Well, it's not a court date. I meet with a prosecutor, and I learned by doing, you know, because I'm a hands-on guy. I'm tactile, right? Like, everything I do is through my hands, and there's a lot of things as being an aircraft mechanic where it's upside down, backwards, and sideways in some cramped space. And, you know, when you've been in spent so much time in confined spaces, you would be just as angry too as to how you get treated by other people and judged. Because, you know, I'll admit I like being in confined spaces, because at that point nothing else can hurt me. You know, I mean, in that space, those tiny spaces, I am entirely responsible for my own actions. I can sleep like a baby inside an aircraft wing in the right environment. You know, obviously have it being vented and so on and so forth. One of my buddies, very similar life path, except, well, he has kids and I don't. He has to deal with his not his ex-wife, but I'd say his baby mamas. And you know, he just passed his AME exam, so good for him. I want to congratulate him on film. He's a mechanic. I'm structures. So, and he's a bit older. He was in cadets as well. You know, these essential life experiences, and so yeah, hat tip to him. Going forward with this, I have this in my hand, which is the cars for the AME here. Right, this cars is Canadian aviation regulations. This is the bar exam, basically, for aircraft mechanics. And my signature carries weight, as do my actions. In every maintenance release, every Form 1, every type certificate, every STC, every AD, and so on and so forth, every deferral, everything I touch, you know, it matters. And so I'm looking at this, without getting into Oh, okay. So what do I want to do? I wanted to look at highlight something. It was a study. This is from Australia. It was published in 2019. It has to do with, and the one thing that I'm gonna cherry pick out of this, and it made me laugh really heartily and heavily because of again fights over money and how I'm being treated and how I don't feel I'm being treated fairly or with respect. Which is number 3 in part A of this, which is the journal is, let's see, Crime and Justice Research 2019, edited by Michael Phelan, APM. And the third one is methamphetamine use associated with domestic violence? And I was laughing. I said, of course it does. Oh my goodness. And then I think about again highlighting previous episodes, right, of HOP when I'm detailing or I'm hinting at the relationship between drug addiction or drug dependence or pharmaceutical dependence and upon behavioral patterns and psychological issues and so on and so forth. Even highlighting over medication or misdiagnoses in order to placate and service the medical industrial complex. I'm going to give a hat tip to Aaron Gunn here. And how terrible it has been. Again, I'm putting this in the 4th volume because of my video, Soldiers and the vaccine was what gave me a strike on YouTube here. So I'm not going to talk about that, and I'm not going to say anything because it's just so. Oh, don't go there! Don't say anything about that. And I'm on my tiny channel. I got like 40 subscribers. Barely anybody watches what I put up. Not to insult the people that actually do. I value you for your time and so on and so forth. I'm not doing this for money. I'm going back to work for Monday. I'll start more training in Quebec and in Montreal. So that's a new endeavor. Again, I'm under a lot of stress right now, just trying to get this car going. This escargot, and family and domestic violence. The second one of that part A is targeting domestic, assessing short-term risks of reoffending. Who reports domestic violence? A review of the evidence. There's 3 different articles, so I'm going to go to page 36 and to methamphetamine use 36. Excuse me. So, reducing domestic violence is a priority for all levels of government in Australia. The high rates of physical, psychological, and emotional abuse, particularly among women. Australian Bureau of Statistics, ABS 2017, Ayer et al. 2016, Cox 2016, create financial costs for victims and put pressure on health, legal, and government services. This has led to growing investment in a wide range of criminal justice interventions and perpetrator programs. Research into the individual, interpersonal, and broader socioeconomic factors that increase the risk of domestic violence has also intensified as a result. Research has shown that substance abuse, including both alcohol and illicit drug use, is a risk factor for many forms of violence. No confirmation bias here, okay? Including domestic. This is the citations. While further research is needed to understand the mechanisms underlying this association, particular attention has been paid to the pharmacological effects of alcohol and illicit drugs. And then compounded with mixing with, psychiatric medications antipsychotics, antidepressants, mood stabilizers, so on and so on and so forth. The complications from where I stand and from my observations of other people, again, coming from a military affiliation and understanding through cadets, that if the body isn't being taken care of, Maslow's hierarchy of needs, basic shit, very basic shit. If you're not exercising, you're not eating well, and if you're not maintaining some kind of schedule and discipline, then it can't help you. Can't do it. Can't do anything about it. You have to start with these things, and one of these things first, and step by step. Obviously. I support behavioral modification and delayed, and reinforcement through delayed gratification, which I do practice. I try to practice quite a bit, but besides the point. I digress. Anyway, so particular attention has been paid to the pharmacological effects of alcohol and illicit drugs. The prevailing view is that these substances reduce inhibition by weakening the cognitive mechanisms restraining violence or otherwise inappropriate actions, while also exaggerating certain emotional states. Hey, caffeine is fucking strong, okay? Like, sometimes I drink a little too much. I get very short, but, personal experience, personal observations, just a little bit embarrassing, but, when things just start going your way. Broader contextual factors related to substance use can also influence the likelihood of violence. Of particular relevance to domestic violence are lifestyle stressors and relationship pressures that emerge or are exacerbated by substance abuse. These stresses include financial strain, relationship breakdown and family conflict. Finally, research has found that both substance use and violence are influenced by a similar set of developmental risk factors, including abusive or neglectful parenting, impulsivity, and other antisocial traits. However, different substances have different pharmacological and behavioral effects, and the profiles of users can vary by substance, meaning the association of different substances with the risk of violence also varies. Again, I see this, and I know this because of, like my parents worked for Teen Challenge Farm for close to a decade, and, I watch people change for the better in a lot of cases. Not every person, not every man was successful in their long-term commitment, but at least you got to see them do something with their lives. Do something. Just do something. It gets so frustrating to watch people repeat the same behavioral patterns of the poverty of the mind, and that have such easy access to information, and such easy paths to reinvention or evolution of the self. And because if we have a drug-addled society, and again, this has to do with the propaganda, because you can't just medicate everything away, and you just can't therapize everything away either. You can't just talk it out. You have to have actions. Actions speak louder than words. Deeds, not words. Whatever motto or phrase of Latin that you want to take, that's gonna make you feel like you're actually doing something. But it's a personal responsibility first, and then a cultural responsibility of every single adult that is cognitive and cognizant of their actions. A lot of people are not awake to what they're doing, and many other people don't want to acknowledge the consequences of their actions. They want to go back to being children. They want to live in this fantasy world, on the internet, the basement dwellers. It's just so fucking embarrassing for the entire culture to have all of these modes of addiction, and then that gets into the justice system, the very mentality and application thereof, of something that's supposed to be objective, but then is specified into oblivion. Anyways, I'm not going to read this whole thing. I just wanted to highlight it to, because tomorrow I gotta support I gotta construct an argument or bring something forth for Thursday. Yeah, so that I don't have to do probation, because I'm innocent. I don't deserve this shit. I'm sick and tired of myself and other men being made into a straw man, when the amount of stress that I and other men have to go through because of the burden of responsibility that comes with being a technical professional or an applied professional. And yet people like me, you keep the world running. We literally support our entire existence in North America and other countries. The very basis of civilization is built and maintained by people like me. By people like me, right? There's no therapy, there's no support workers, there's no fucking hospitals, okay? There's no technology without people like me. Let's be clear about that, right? There's no police officers, there's no guns, there's no telephone lines, there's no television, there's no internet, there's no trucks, there's no cars, there's no farmers, there's no combines, there's no harvesters. Dead in the water. So again, what I'm holding here is that I've read a lot of this stuff before, and in my years, and hence why I'm so pumped up at some point to finish my bachelor degree with Trent. That's my wish. My history degree, and then move on with other education towards engineering, or maybe something else a little more spicy. We'll see. Anyways, so what I have here is Thomas Hobbes and the Leviathan, right? So, or the matter, form, and the power of commonwealth, ecclesiastical, and civil. So, chapter 13, men by nature equal. Nature. So in my he's trying to make this a little less theistic, because obviously I'll reference the actual biography of Mr. Hobbes. Nature hath made so equal in the facilities of the body and mind, as that though were to be found one man sometimes manifestly stronger in body, or of quicker mind than another, yet when all is reckoned together, the difference between man and man is not so considerable, as that one man can thereupon claim to himself any benefit to which another may not pretend as well as he. So if I can explain that in different words, nature doesn't create man equal, but when we think about it, the differences between people is not so much. So there's not any. You can't ignore that. Both of those principles. For as to the strength of body, the weakest has strength enough to kill the strongest, either by secret machination or by confederacy with others that are in the same danger with himself. So through collusion and through team building, many can kill one, and it can kill another person in many different ways, because again, you die 3 times, or there's fates worse than death. A lifetime sentence with torture. Say like the Man in the Iron Mask. You lock them up and throw away the key. Forget about it. As to the facilities of the mind, setting aside the arts grounded upon words, and especially that skills of proceeding upon general and infallible rules, called science, which very few have, but in few things, as being not a native facility, born with us, nor attained as prudence, while we look after somewhat else, I find yet a great equality amongst men than that of strength. For prudence is but experience, which equals time, equally bestows on all men in those things that equally apply themselves unto. That which may perhaps make such equality incredible, but is but a vain conceit of one's own wisdom, which almost all men think they have in a greater degree than the vulgar, that is, than all men but themselves and a few others, whom by fame or by concurring with themselves they approve. For such is the nature of men, that howsoever they may acknowledge many others to be more witty and more eloquent and more learned, yet they will hardly believe there be many so wise as themselves, for they see their own wit at hand and other men's at distance. But this proveth rather that men are in that point equal than unequal. For there is not ordinarily a great sign of the equal distribution of anything, than that every man is contented with his share. So what that really means, if you ask me, is that it doesn't matter where you start in life. What matters is where you are in this very moment, and what you've done with your life at this moment, or up to this moment. Because life is not a video game. It's not a video game. You can't, and then like it seems like some of the complaint here, or the sentiment, is that he's thinking, well, you can't spend your entire life with your nose in a book and expect respect when you're not understood. Because if you're not understood, then it doesn't matter. Your intelligence doesn't matter. From equality proceeds diffidence. From this equality of ability arises equality of hope in the attaining of our ends. So the ends justify the means. So hopefulness. And therefore, if any two men desire the same thing, which nevertheless they cannot both enjoy, they become enemies, and in the way to their end, which is principally their own conservation, and sometimes their delection only, endeavor to destroy or subdue one another. And from hence it comes to pass that where an invader hath no more to fear than another man's single power, if one plant, sow, build, or possess a convenient seat, others may probably be expected to come prepared with forces united to dispossess and deprive him not only of the fruit of his labor, but also of his life or liberty. And the invader again is in the like danger of another. So in any kind of conflict, it doesn't matter how it starts. Both parties have the potential to destroy each other. So from equality proceeds diffidence. So let's get the definition of that, diffidence. Modesty or shyness resulting from a lack of self-confidence. So humility, modesty. If you don't know what you're doing, don't fucking do it. Don't get into a fight. All right. From diffidence, war. So insecurity. That's true. From insecurity breeds conflict, right? Because there's the jealousy, right? And the envy. And the gluttony of power. And to preside over someone else. From diffidence, war. And from this diffidence of one another, there is no way for any man to secure himself. So reasonable as anticipation, that is, by forces or wiles, to master the person of all men, he can, master the persons of all men he can, so long till he see no other power great enough to endanger him, and this is no more than his own conversation requireth, and is generally allowed. Also because there is some that taking pleasure in contemplating their own power in the act of conquest, which they pursue farther than their security requires, if others that otherwise would be glad to be at ease within modest bounds, should not by invasion increase their power, they would not be able long time, by standing only on their defense, to subsist. And by consequence, such argumentation of dominion over men being necessary to a man's conservation, it ought to be allowed him. He should be allowed to do it. Again, men have no pleasure, but on the contrary, a great deal of grief, in keeping company where there is no power able to overawe them all. For every man looketh that his companion should value him at the same rate he sets upon himself, and upon all signs of contempt, or undervaluing, naturally endeavors, as far as he dares, which amongst them that have no common power to keep them in quiet, is far enough to make them destroy each other, to extort a greater value from his contemners, freaking English, man, by damage, and from others by the example. I'm not going to read the whole thing because it's lengthy, right? And because it's in the English of the era. Of the liberty of subjects. What is it to be free? And according to this proper and generally received meaning of the word, a free man is he that in those things which by his strength and wit he is able to do, is not hindered to do what he has a will to. But when the word free and liberty are applied to anything but bodies, they are abused. For that which is not subject to motion, it is not subject to impediment, and therefore, when it is said, for example, the way is free, no liberty of the way is signified, but of those that walk in it without stop. And when we say a gift is free, there is not meant any liberty of the gift, but of the giver, that was not bound by any law or covenant to give it. I'm skipping through, again, I have the motivation to understand this. Not just because of the conflicts that I face, but because I have an interest in a just society where the cream rises to the top, and we stop making stupid people famous. And we stop allowing the inept and the idiotic and the psychotic to rule over those who have true and true and valid feelings and passion for life. Let's see. Therefore, the subjects have a liberty to defend their own bodies, even against them that lawfully invade them. Are not bound to hurt themselves. If the sovereign command a man, though justly condemned, to kill, wound, or maim himself, or not to resist those that assault him, or to abstain from the use of food, air, medicine, or any other thing, although he cannot live, yet hath that man the liberty to disobey. So I disobey. And as I said in one of the other videos, I will commit. I'm not going to incriminate myself. I may or may not commit. Correct myself here. Redact that first statement. An act of civil disobedience. Non-violent resistance to a law or a few laws for which I would say cause harm to me and to others. And I will not, again, by these principles, I will not obey laws, unjust laws. I will not obey laws that are unenforceable, and I will seek to strike down that for which persecutes my person, my life, and my liberty. So under the Charter of Rights and Freedom, all of these they're not privileges. They're irrevocable. That's why it's there. That's why it was created. That's why it was signed by the Queen. For fuck's sakes. I'm not gonna go through this whole thing, but I'm gonna have to. I will have to. Second discourse on the origin and foundations of inequality among men. Now, there's opponents out there that would say, "Oh, this is patriarchal," and so on and so forth. But in the time, we got to be careful not to impose current cultural values upon the past. Actually, that's a big no-no. Don't ever do that. Because it removes the context of the writing. Right? So, the greatest liberty of subjects dependeth on the silence of the law. As for other liberties, they depend on the silence of the law. In cases where the sovereign has prescribed no rule, there the subject hath the liberty to do or forbear according to his own discretion. And therefore such liberty is in some places more, and in some less. And in sometimes more, in other times less. According as they that have the sovereignty shall think most convenient. And this, I've said this before in one of the other videos. The justice system follows the culture and follows the ruler, and that which is objectively criminal at one point in time becomes legal in another. You see, and because the times are changing, man, and like I'm looking at stuff that's on the internet and stuff that happens on the internet, and it's completely unenforceable, completely, utterly unenforceable under the argumentation and the rules of law that are and legislation that is established. Or So we're at 35 minutes, and that's where I'm going to stop. Don't ever do anything that would cause harm to yourself. Because suicide removes the opportunity for something better, and it just passes the grief on to everybody else. And then there's more than one way to commit suicide. If we're going to correlate this back to previous themes, and behaviors, negative behaviors, toxic behaviors towards yourself and to others, which are not immediately noticed, or they're just neglected and just allowed to continue. Excuse me. Kiss it goodbye. We are a few rulings away from disaster and anarchy. Anyways, I look forward to passing my bar. Here, this one, right? I haven't done it yet because of other factors and anxieties and insecurities. Trying to accomplish something here. So you, as the viewer, I hope you're interested, and because it takes all of us. It takes the culture to change the legislation, collective effort, and because of the political machinations, the Machiavellianism of other people, that for which they think is better for the rest of society because of their individual and group motivations, which then becomes conspiracy. You see, not to toot my own horn. That's it. Anyways, this is going to be Leviathan. That's what I'm going to call it. I'm going to call it Leviathan. See you in the next one.